I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to just a little ahead of on the agenda. We have we wanted to acknowledge, and we're hoping there are some folks here from the Naughty Oar, but wanted to acknowledge their hard work on our recent carp tournament on May 20th with a great turnout of 13 teams and the biggest haul we've had. We started an overnight tournament this year, and that resulted in 62 fish and some very fancy boats. I mean, I was impressed at 6 in the morning when they all came in. We did apparently have some comments to the Sheriff's Department about that somebody may have landed from outer space because these boats were all out there with their very fancy lights, but I think it was a great turnout. The weather, I believe, was good. The water quality could have been better, I guess, but at least the fishermen were very happy, and again, all of this would not have been so successful without the participation of the Naughty Oar crew. So hopefully if they come in today, we hope to give them some public acknowledgement of their hard work and efforts in getting this going. We also would like to introduce a new partner. Spring Lake Township has been a great partner for the Watershed District over the many years. The Watershed District probably has been in doing business, and Melissa Hanson is the new clerk at Spring Lake Township. Welcome. Would you like to just say a few words with us? And if you just come up to the podium and kind of hit the button there, it'll turn red, but welcome. We're looking forward to working with you, and welcome you to Spring Lake Township.
Thank you. I've had a great person that has led the way and worked closely with you, and it's my full intent to be able to do the same and really keep that partnership working as effectively and as efficiently as it is currently. So thank you for the welcome, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Great, thank you. Okay, at this point, we're going to ask if there is any public comment. If anyone wishes to address the Board of Managers on an item not on the agenda or on the consent agenda, please come forward at this time. Turn on the microphone and state your name and address. We may limit the amount of time that you for your comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak to an issue not on the agenda tonight? I think I have to ask this 3 times. Is there anyone interested in speaking to the board tonight? Is there anyone interested in speaking to the board tonight? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment and move on to approval of the agenda. If I would look to one of the board managers for approval.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second that.
Are there any comments or any changes or deletions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to the 4.0 on the agenda, we're going to try a couple of things tonight, and I know we have some people in the audience that are as interested in some of these discussions as I know the board members are. But we thought we had a little scare a couple of weeks ago. We had a lot of rain. We have a tremendous amount of water in the watershed, so we don't have a lot of backup storage, if you like. And I know the managers have been at my home. I have a wetland behind my house, very close behind my house, and it has been full of water all winter long with no snow. So this spring it was full, as was the system, and we got 8 inches over a couple of weeks ago, over a week period, 7 or 8 inches. And go ahead.
Mr. Chair, managers, I think it was more like 5.
5 or 6?
Yeah.
Okay. In 2014, it was 11 inches over 8 days. So somewhere in that area. So the district did a lot of work, and we're going to just talk a little bit about the work that's been done both at the district and at the city to prepare for more rain. Fortunately, we didn't get more rain, but we were getting quite worried that a rain event like 2014 might have been even worse than 2014 if we, given the condition of the watershed district. So the flood planning study that was done between our partners, Spring Lake Township, the city, and the watershed district, did a lot of work over a couple of years to prepare not only a response, which the city was getting ready to respond a couple of weeks ago, including damming the outlet between Spring Lake and Prior Lake, and the work that's involved with the Department of Natural Resources to actually make that happen or have permission to make that happen. The work that was done over the winter with the low flow gate operation, and again, getting some state authority to manage that more effectively than we had, which was part of our flood management program. But also the kind of the behind the screen work that was done as part of the flood management study, which was to update the models, the computer models that tell us what will happen if an inch of rain falls, or 5 inches of rain falls, or 10 inches of rain falls. And so we've asked the district engineer, Carl Almer, and Pete Young from Prior Lake to just tell us how that model works and some of the results that they were seeing as we asked them to take a look at this over that weekend a couple of weeks ago, right? Is that where we were? So Carl and Pete, do you want to come up to the podium and tell us your magic?
Mr. Chair, managers, we have a few slides prepared for you. If we could, do I control them here? What's that? I don't think this is even on. Nothing's on the screen or seems to be functioning. There we go. Use the field laptop login. That's all right. There we go. Where? So now I think we have everything up on your screen. So just a little bit of background before we talk about the model specifically. This is the image that's in front of you is the entirety of everything that drains to the chain of lakes. First, predominantly, as you work from the bottom of the page to the north to Spring Lake, what we call the upper watershed, and that is obviously the largest portion of the drainage area to the overall chain of lakes comes through Spring Lake and or Buck Lake. And then we pick up all the way down in the southwest to Sutton and Swamp. But that just kind of gives you a general overall feel for how large of a drainage area this is. We're talking, I think, close to 30 square miles in total. I mean, the watershed, it's probably closer to 40 actually. There's a difference between political and hydrologic. So a little bit of background, you can see the blue lines are what were delineated as sub-watersheds, areas of distinct drainage to a low point or some sort of feature before that would then overflow to the next downstream conveyance route, ditch, or lake or wetland. So everything is coming ultimately to Lower Prior Lake. This is directly from the SWIM model. All the lines and squares and triangles are just physical representations of model elements, whether it be a lake or a pond or a wetland or a culvert. And then the lines drawn between those little shapes are the flow paths between those areas. So I guess also feel free to interject any questions as I go along. So as we were approaching that Memorial Day weekend, and getting questions on whether or not Spring Lake Dam should go in, what's the lake level forecast going to get to, we were thinking maybe simple calculations, or why not use the SWIM model that the city and the Watershed paid to have developed and have a little bit more robust of a forecast. And what you really need to do that is not just simulate future rainfall, but you need to kind of need to charge the system, so to speak. You need to accurately represent the amount of water that's already up in the upper watershed that's coming down through the system. So what this is really showing you right now is just kind of basic, real high level, what the model needs are for utilizing this and trying to do a forecast. And so you have this warm-up period, which we need to pull historic rainfall records and run that. So we build up the water in the system, charge it. Weather data such as air temperature and evaporation rates. So we're estimating the losses that occur during that period. And then any other information that we can use to help calibrate that warm-up period. So observed lake levels, flow conditions.
So Carl, this is information you loaded 2 weeks ago. It's not information that's being loaded continuously.
Correct. It was a one-event scenario. So anytime that you do this forecasting, you'd need to do kind of a new warm-up period. It's no longer valid. It represented a snapshot in time.
Okay,
And we'd have to kind of add the additional rainfall records that occurred from that Friday before Memorial to date, or whenever you wanted to try to do another forecast. And then for planning purposes, we could see where the water was on the lake, Prior Lake, and we know the ordinary high water level. We know what kind of the requirements have been in the past for operating or installing that Spring Lake Dam. So there was dialogue back and forth, although not a formal official procedure with DNR, kind of more, okay, let's get through this weekend. In the event that we have a larger rainfall event, what's the trigger to maybe start considering installation of that dam? So just professional judgment, we picked a few rainfall simulations to run on top of that warm-up period. So looking at...
So Gay, Carl, just for the audience, we were going into a 3-day weekend, and we kind of needed to know where the state authorities were, and one of them was going on vacation on Friday for like a week. So we were getting a little nervous about a heavy rain event over any one of those 3 days. We didn't have an audience out there so we really had to kind of get ahead of this and make a decision on Friday afternoon about what we might do over those 3 days. And that's kind of the decision that prompts you to begin this work, or both of you to begin this work.
Correct. Yeah, good background. So now the slide that I have in front of you right now is just it's a graphical way to show what I was speaking, and this is actually just showing kind of a screenshot from the model. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but I guess the main things to look at are, the majority, 80% of the left side of the screen is the warm-up period, whereby we had rainfall records, and you have to read this kind of upside down, so to speak, rainfall 0 along this axis, and then as you see these longer bars on that particular day, whatever that was, in early May, mid-May, there was almost an inch of rainfall. So you can kind of see we had daily rainfall records, totals, and then here's another one kind of around probably the 17th or something, another 1.4 inches. So the bottom is the data from a nearby, not within the watershed, but a nearby rainfall record that gives us more than just daily totals. So we had to kind of reconcile those two, not to get into the details too much, but the model really requires rainfall intensity more than just daily rainfall totals. The amount of runoff significantly varies on intensity and duration. So if you got an inch of rain, say over 2 hours, the amount of runoff that's going to get to the lakes is going to be a lot more than if that inch came over, say, 12 hours or longer or something. So if it comes in short bursts, there's a lot more runoff. So you need that detailed rainfall record. So this is just, like I said, the whole left side virtually is just kind of showing that warming up period. And then we start to see several different colors here, and these are the various events that we ran, which are more readily kind of seen in this slide, where again, the left is the warm-up period. So we have kind of the observed elevations on Prior Lake, and with the information that we had at hand and could readily get that was more detailed for what the model needs, we were able to approximate that lake level and bring it to approximately what it was right there before the holiday weekend, so that that water would continue through the system into the simulation. It's not a perfect fit, but with what was available, it's a good kind of warming up setup. And then that takeoff point where you see multiple lines coming off the green, the continuation of the green was what would happen if there was no more rainfall, going quite a ways, quite a period out, obviously, all the way to a couple days from now, if I'm not correct, tomorrow. And then we have just instantaneous simulation of 24-hour events that range from 1 inch of rain, and we ran 2 of these. The other one is just estimated. We ran the 1 inch rainfall event over 24 hours, and then what's called the 2-year event, or nearly 2.5 inches over 24 hours. We ran that in the model, and then these are the curves that represent that. So the peak for a 1 inch would have brought the lake level over the weekend to about, 903.7. And we knew from running the model that, albeit wasn't over the weekend, if we would have gotten that 2 inches of rain over 24 hours, that the ultimate peak, where my cursor keeps going, would reach almost 904.5, but at a later date. So with professional judgment, after having run those 2 runs, we were estimating that it would be about 1.5 inch rainfall event over 24 hours to approach the ordinary high water level. And that's really kind of at that time what was the dialogue back and forth with DNR in terms of when they would even consider, allowing or proceeding with installation of the Spring Lake Dam. So that's
slowing down the water coming from Spring Lake to Upper Park.
Correct.
But does this assume that outlet is open or not open?
It assumes that the conditions at the time, which were that the outlet was as open as it could be. The low gate was open, and the weir that is just non-operable and flows is open to max capacity.
So this assumes that you were not closing that outlet, these levels. Is this Upper
Correct.
Prior? Or is this
Yes, let me back up. I think I misunderstood.
Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it assumes that there was nothing changed at the Spring Lake Dam location, and that the Prior Lake outlet was functioning to its maximum capacity at the lake elevation ranges that it was at.
So, and again, what if that outlet was controlled, the net effect is that let's say we got the 1.5 inches, that the water levels would stay higher on Prior Lake longer, probably, as Spring Lake releases water more slowly.
It's a very much a volume-driven system, so, while intensity and duration of an individual event is important, but ultimately the bigger driver is just the amount in terms of a long-term kind of looking at the peak on a longer range of time when you're looking at this. So that's why we ran it out to essentially tomorrow, to make sure that we were able to capture what simulated peaks might happen in the future. So I know that there's ongoing discussions with DNR. I don't know if we want to be talking about that. If not, I don't know if there's any questions.
So Carl, a question. The closest body of water I have to watch is my wetland and Pike Lake. How do you know that my wetland is, how does this model tell you that my wetland is full of water?
It probably doesn't. I'm guessing that the wetland within and around your yard is not
Itself, but
physically discretely modeled within, because these are still fairly large watersheds, subwatersheds that we're talking about. So unless we're talking something that's probably on the order of 5 acres or more of a water body, I highly doubt it's
But all the
simulated.
data points you had on the map earlier,
Yep.
are some of those in real time measured?
Some, only the larger water bodies.
Okay, but then you can extrapolate what that means in my wetland.
If it's a discretely modeled feature in the model, which I don't think it is. But could we estimate the lake level on Sutton Lake, Swamp Lake, or
Okay.
any of the larger water bodies? If I could get this to go back, it seems,
Well, Jamie and I were
Do you know what
watching
this-
Pike Lake, which was going up pretty dramatically too. I mean, so yes. And I wasn't so much necessarily trying to focus on my own wetland, other
No,
than
no.
you and I have been talking all winter that the watershed's full of water, not
so
just my
any,
wetland.
kind of going back to this slide or this slide, whichever, anywhere that you see, this is probably easiest, a green dot is a place in which the model is simulating water elevation on that water body throughout the course of the event that we ran. So we could go to the model with these simulation runs and look at any of these water bodies and see kind of a record of the historic and forecasted water level on those water bodies.
Questions, board members? Woody?
Thank you, Fred. Just a question. I don't know, Carl or Pete, who sent the email out? I know it was somewhat reassuring. Was it on Friday you guys predicted that there was a email and a prediction that the lake would hit 903.6, it would stay below or it would top out at that level? Was that something you produced, or?
I think we all came together at various angles. Jamie estimated, I believe, something close to that as well. That was based on what the system had in it and what the flows were, the primary flows from Spring Lake were, kind of comparing that to evaporation rates. So we were saying that, without much rainfall or with essentially no rainfall, the model was simulating something actually less than that, but we were thinking that it would probably be around 903, 5.5 to 6, something like
Anyway,
that.
Woody?
Lots of congratulations to the team, I guess, because I don't know, was it 55? Was that what we hit, I think? So you guys were kind of right on the money. Anyway, congratulations, that was a good job.
Mr. President,
Kurt?
Carl, the years going forward, let's say 3 to 5 years, are we going to be in the same scenario, chewing our fingernails and sweating bullets, hanging around this breaking point? What do you see? And what's a long-range mitigation for this? I guess it's a question to Pete Young just as much as you.
Well, I think if you listen to kind of the predominance of science would seem to say that, we're experiencing more frequent and heavy rainfall patterns. That's what the recent NOAA Atlas 14 is indicating, that our precipitation depths are much greater for the larger rainfall events, and they seem to be happening more frequently. You also seem to be in a really, even unique time in that frame of mind of global warming and everything, of just this is a really, really wet period these last 12 months. I don't know if it's the wettest for this local area, but it's in the top handful for sure. So, anybody's guess is just that, but it sure seems like everything is kind of lining up to be really wet, for sure.
But just one more quick thing, of course, one thing we forget about is whenever we have these tremendous waters coming through, it's going over the weir, and a goodly amount of water is not getting treated at the ferric chloride plant, right?
In part, yep.
Any other questions, managers? Charlie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pete, are you up to speed with the model? Are you using the PC Swim, or if not, is
We
it
don't
in-
use it at the city. We don't have the program, so we would rely on the Watershed so far to run it. We've also asked BAR to do a couple things with it since they created it.
Okay, thank you. And the only reason I asked that, and it's just so everybody's aware, is this exercise of forecasting, it's not free. It costs money. So, not to say, don't give Carl work, because that's what he's our engineer, but we got to be a little careful, just think, oh, this is great, let's forecast, once a week we can forecast everything. Well, we don't, it's not in our budget to do that. So just keep that in mind when we're thinking about this stuff.
To give you some assurance, Diana and I did consider, and again, the Memorial Day weekend was the thing that was giving us some concern, and people going on vacations. Diane?
Mr. Chair, managers, to that point, the city and the district, as well as Carl, are talking about some type of what Jenny Skanke from the DNR said, bullet points. I want you to put some bullet points together that will tell you when it is that you need to put the dam in. And she has indicated that the DNR would like to get out of the middle of that. And we're going, hooray for that. But we now have several different options that would be bullet points. And as a matter of fact, staff are meeting on Thursday, and then we'll run them by Carl, who's already provided feedback. So this is early June, so we're all a bit concerned about what we might face. So we want to make sure we have those at the ready, so that if we have to, we can implement our plan, so which Pete will talk about.
Carl?
All right, so thanks for having me in today. I'm Pete Young. I'm a water resources engineer for the city of Prior Lake. And I don't have a presentation to put up here, but I believe you may have or will soon have a copy of a draft flood protection plan that the city has been working on. Do you have it yet? You haven't seen it. So I'm just going to give a quick outline. I actually have an example. We went through some of these steps this spring already. It was a good test of, I think, how prepared we are. We had a lot of lessons learned in 2014, so tried to apply those into a new policy. This is one of the things that came out of the flood study, so it's one of the main recommendations in the short term, along with the outlet operation and then upstream storage with the top three. So the purpose of this policy, it's just in our standard city policy format, so it's going to have a purpose. We're basically defining and outlining our city response to local flooding. We haven't had a policy that deals directly with flooding in the past. It was kind of a response based on need, but we thought it was time to have an official policy. This isn't approved yet at the city level. It was going to be on the meeting last night. I got bumped to the next meeting, so. It was a long meeting, apparently. So it's on the 26th, so you'll have a chance to look at it in the future. So lake levels have been one of the main concerns, or one of the most important issues for the community of Prior Lake. So we think it's important to have this. Development is, like I said, one of the main implementation responses of the flood study. So the outline, part of it is just defining the responsibility for flood protection. And we had those items that were in the flood study. The top ones we came up with were protecting public safety, in addition to public health and safety, which deals more with the infrastructure, sanitary sewer and water for the most part, maintaining traffic flow through the 21 corridor, as well as access to private property, which doesn't mean protecting the private property itself. It means providing the access, which was one of the big concerns we heard back in 2014, where people couldn't drive even to their driveway. They had to canoe in some cases, or walk through floodwaters, which isn't ideal, so we'd like to provide that access as a city, at least to get to their doorstep or to their driveway. And then the responsibility of the property owners in the city would be to protect their own private property from the right-of-way back. And that's what was recommended from the council during our work sessions and during the flood study. So getting further into this, and I'm not going to read it all, but we do have kind of an interesting, I think, and good way to handle the response to flooding, which is based on the different levels that the lake reaches, Prior Lake, and then also Spring Lake. And then this also takes us from our response as a staff, as Public Works for the most part, into the emergency operations structure that we have, which would be for a local emergency. And we did have one in 2014. At higher lake levels, we would expect that to be called by our emergency management director, who's in the police department. So they have a role, but only at the higher levels of lake levels. And then it also goes through tracking that we have to do for FEMA if we want to get reimbursed, and cleanup. So that's the basics of this. I do want to give an example of what we did and how it fits. So at least for Prior Lake, the first elevation we have listed is 903. And I was trying to follow this when we hit 903. So we did a few of these things. One of them was working with the township to look at putting out Save Our Shores signs, which is a recommendation to have no wake on the lake starting at 903.5. So at 903, we start thinking about, well, do we have to put these out pretty soon? We find where they are, down probably in the shop somewhere. Then we start looking for sources of equipment that we might need, such as pumps, storm sewer plugs to stop the water from coming back up through the storm sewers that we might need at higher elevations. There's a couple categories we don't really deal with at 903, like sandbagging. We deal with those later. Nothing with our emergency operations plan. We do start some coordination. We worked with you folks, with the staff from Prior Lake, Spring Lake, regarding the levels, and then checking on the outlet channel. What else? Communications, we start posting some things on our website, updates for staff. Pretty simple at that point, and then it ramps up from there. So we did get over 903.5. At that level, we do deploy the signs. So they were out for a few days. They've now been taken down, but we have the advisory Save Our Shores signs, and you might have seen them at the launch. But we have those available anytime. And as soon as it drops back below and it looks like the forecast is okay, we'll pull those signs. And we do notify the sheriff and the DNR of that as well. Coordinating with the Prior Lake Watershed, and then what else we have here? Pretty similar to the lower level, but then we are coordinating with the sheriff just in case we need to go no wake, which is 903.9, which is the next level that we have. And that's the ordinary high, and that's when we start to have the lake-wide slow no wake on Prior. We're starting to offer sandbags for sale at that point to residents, offering guidance on how to build sandbag walls. Then we're starting to get involved with the emergency management director, getting them up to speed, saying you might need to look at this in the future if we get higher. Updating the mayor and the city council, more agency coordination. We do take water quality samples at our public beaches. We've had to close those in the past based on high water if you just can't get out there, but we continue to test those for E. coli. We start protecting our infrastructure at that point, so sealing off sanitary manholes, blocking off lift stations so we don't get infiltration of water into the sanitary system, and a lot of more information out to the public. And then I'm not going to go through really the high ones, but you get the picture. We just step it up from there, and then we eventually get to a local emergency. For Spring Lake, very similar. At the lower levels, we start watching things. more communication and more coordination as we step up in level. And then on Spring Lake, we don't have any infrastructure that's threatened, public infrastructure when it gets high, so roads, sanitary sewer lines, that kind of thing. So some of those things we do on Prior Lake, we don't have on Spring Lake. And then the last thing I want to mention in here, so protecting public safety, we've got different flood watch areas, and we'll have a map of each one in this, and it shows more of a guide for our staff and for the public where sand piles could be located during a flood emergency, where they can go get sand for their sandbags, where to get different things like that, where the barriers go to protect the road right-of-ways. It's pretty specific. So there's a lot that's really outlined on what we did in 2014 in here, in addition to some other things that didn't happen. It's just more communication, which is what we heard from residents. And the 21 corridor, which is key, trying to work with the county to keep that open. And that is, they have the road right-of-way, they have the jurisdiction there, so this is more of an advisory and how we want to work with them to protect that area. But ultimately, that is the county's jurisdiction. So any questions on that? It's kind of a 14-page policy plus
Pete,
attachments, so you'll see it.
Just one question on the 21 corridor. I know we talked to one of the planners 6 months ago that there's some planning work being done in that corridor on the north end or west end.
The county
of the
engineers.
Do you know where that process is?
I haven't had any updates recently.
So when you mention keeping that corridor functioning, do we know what that means yet?
To us,
And that's
it
not,
means
I
that it
understand
has
that's
to be
not your responsibility necessarily, but do we
Right.
know where the county is at this point?
No, I don't have any recent updates. To us, though, maintaining it open means at least 2 lanes, probably down the middle. And then one of the problems in 2014 was the catch basins there are lower than the berm that separates the lake. It came up from underneath, and we couldn't block those. We tried. There was sediment, there was some kind of physical restriction inside these structures, or we couldn't block the flow from the lake. So that's kind of the main thing that needs to happen with the county. And those conversations, I think, still need to happen with them as they plan their project, So
the stormwater drains themselves, are those the cities or the counties?
those would be the counties.
But they manage those, or do you at that point? once they're
Those
installed?
are within the counties right away. That's part of their MS4, it's called, so their drainage system, which is basically at the right of way. But we work with them very closely, of course.
Any
And
other
we would,
questions,
if they
Madam
told
Chair?
us which work they needed to do, I think we would be set up to do the work locally.
Just for those in the audience, there's a trick to managing the outlet from Spring Lake to Prior Lake, because we can only hold back so much water before we start flooding properties in Spring Lake. So I know it's always been interesting how we're going to explain that to the public, because we're going to get to a 3-inch rainstorm, and all of a sudden we're going to open the outlet from Spring Lake to Prior Lake, and but that's based on what water level there is in Prior Lake, in Spring Lake. And I don't think we had a whole lot of room this time around, Kurt, did we?
I think the ordinary high water mark is what, 912.8? And buildings start flooding at 913, 912.9, and it got up to what, 912.5? What was the highest reading last month? 912.5, 912.6, something like that, didn't it? 3? Okay, well, it wasn't quite as high as I thought, but yeah, once it gets up to that level, you're going to start flooding 913, you're going to start flooding Spring Lake structures.
We could have had the outlet closed for 4 or 5 days, and then we open it again, right? Is that how that might have worked? Any other questions or comments? Woody?
Yeah, just a comment. One of the Watershed website, of course, a very popular place at this time of year, people watching water levels. And I think it was last weekend, there was a strange phenomenon. The water level on the lake, even though at that point it seemed the weather had improved and the rain had stopped, the lake level was increasing. And so one of the other challenges for the public to be that the district and city manage is keeping the outlet structure free of vegetation. And that's been going on now certainly since last weekend. And I don't know, Jamie, are we at 2 a day or 3 a day? I don't know what we're at now, but okay. So that's another another area of concern, another area that the district keeps its eye on in terms of keeping the outlet doesn't work very well if the structure is full of vegetation. So.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you to all of the team. Carl, Melissa, your newest member, we appreciate your being here tonight, but welcome to flood land. Lots of excitement. Hopefully that was helpful in the audience. We are going to just take a look at the aquatic vegetation issues that have been coming up, not just for the outlet itself, but on the lake, if you would like to stay for that. But Megan, Brett, did we answer some of your questions? Are we doing our job here? Great. I think a lot of work has gone into it since 2014, and I hopefully we're well prepared for the next event, which hopefully doesn't come anytime soon. So Jamie, do you want to talk a little bit about, I think you're next, or?
What am I looking at? Sorry, 1 second here. How about we do the programs and projects update? Is that all right? Is that what we're going to do? Okay.
This is out of our ordinary order, but we thought if people were here to learn a little bit about the high water procedures, that we'd also talk to the aquatic vegetation at the same time.
Oh, do you just want me to talk about the vegetation, or I'm sorry, I'm confused if we were going to
talk about the vegetation.
Oh, I didn't know I was going to do that.
We can go through the programs and projects, I think.
Well, you're going to talk about it there.
I was going to mention it. Okay, yeah, so, yeah, I guess to start off, like we always do with the level of Prior Lake, it is at 903.2, and even despite the rain that we've gotten over the last few days or so, it is still dropping, so it just kind of rose, right as we got the rain, but it's continuing to drop because we're not getting a significant amount of water from Spring Lake, so that's a good thing. You can see in this graph that right around here, if you can see that mouse, where the lake started to rise again, and that's what Woody was talking about or 2 weekends ago now, when we got a lot of vegetation stuck on the outlet structure. This happened Saturday. We cleared the structure on Friday, and by Saturday, the lake was already starting to rise. This has never happened before in, I don't know, probably, the history of this outlet structure being built. As we've heard from multiple residents around the lake, this is the worst that they've ever seen it. I've heard in 70 years, I've heard in 30 years, and the time that anybody's ever seen it. We can't explain exactly why there is so much vegetation besides most likely weather, because it's happening on pretty much all the lakes in this area. The small little lakes, Buck Lake, the little lake out here, lots of complaints about filamentous algae. We've talked to Steve McComas, which is the lake detective, and he's, assured us that it's kind of the perfect storm, if you will, for the curly leaf pondweed and filamentous algae. So it's not just Prior Lake or Spring Lake, it's all over the place. So in this picture, you can kind of see, this is looking from the inside of the outlet structure out. You can see there's vegetation built up, so it's holding back some water, so not as much water was able to leave the outlet. As you can see, and also the next picture, this was about the worst that it got, where you can see the water inside the structure was way down. Kurt, you have a question?
What do you do with the vegetation you clean out of that? Is it hauled away someplace? Is it piled up? What eventually happens to it?
So when we remove the vegetation, we pile it on the shore, and that pile is taken away by the city of Prior Lake. So when that pile gets big, I let Pete know, and the city comes and gets it. Also, some of it we just kind of send through the grates, and it goes down the system into a wetland where it opens, where the pipe outlets. So this is, like I said, again, this is the worst I've ever seen. Even, we had some complaints during the flood in 2014 that there was vegetation blocking the outlet structure, but we went, all through that, and the water was still at the same level. So there was vegetation, you can see it, but it wasn't as tightly packed as it is now with all the vegetation that's letting loose from the lake. It could be some natural die-off. We've heard of some people that are cutting their weeds and bringing it into the middle of the lake. And then, just the wind, the flow, a lot of combinations causing all this vegetation. So this is kind of what it looked like before we cleared the vegetation, and then this is after, so you can kind of see how the water filled up and again was outletting at max capacity here. So we are working, the city of Prior Lake is going to help us remove the vegetation to check it during the week. We are currently checking it 2 times a week, or 2 times a day. Over the weekend, we had 3 times a week. We had volunteers, if you know Steve Reinders, better known as the Facebook flood guy, and some of his neighbors came and helped out over the weekend, and so we've got a lot of people looking after this. And since Saturday morning, there was a little bit of a bigger blockage, I guess you could say. The water dropped maybe 1 foot to 1.5 foot. And that's kind of how you can tell how much water it's holding back. The bigger the drop, the more water it's holding back between the outside of the grate and the inside. But since Saturday morning, we haven't had any significant buildups, but we're going to continue going out twice a day until we feel more comfortable with it. Yeah, so our interns are going out in the mornings, and then either me or the city of Prior Lake or other staff would be going out in the afternoon. And Steve or other volunteers may be going in the evening. We're allowing them to if they feel the need to check and clear it. Any other questions on the vegetation? Was that what you were looking for, Fred? And okay. Mary Ann?
Mr. Chair, managers.
Mary Ann?
On this picture, okay, the staff took this picture, but there's no volunteers that go down inside our structure, right?
Okay, so we aren't actually inside the structure to take this picture, but our hand is. So I put my hand in there to take the pictures. Yes, it's very dangerous inside there otherwise. Yeah. I guess I kind of want to show you this other picture too, if you don't mind. Here's another picture that was kind of dark, so you couldn't see it as well, but if you can see right here, this is the low flow gate. So when you hear about the low flow gate, so the water's coming in and then it drops down, and that's the gate right there. I know it's not a very good picture, but that's where it is. So that's located lower, about a foot or so, a couple feet lower than the top of the weir itself. So then just the hydrograph of Spring Lake is also coming down, so that's looking good. Pike Lake is a little bit interesting and intriguing. We honestly have no idea what's going on, but it's kind of got a mind of its own. It's going up and down, and this is the first year that we have this automated logger in the lake, so this is the first time that we've been able to see what's going on. So as you can see, like Spring Lake is dropping steady. This is the same time frame. Pike Lake is going up and down. So Pike Lake is more affected by the outlet channel, so the water that is leaving the lake. So a little bit of this would be because of that vegetation blockage, but that's not the main issue here. We'll be looking into this a little bit more.
Just a few project updates. So with Fish Point Park, we did a planting event on May 26th. We had 3 different environmental science classes from Prior Lake High School come and help us out. And during that event, we had planted 840 wetland and native prairie plants surrounding our water quality features. We also had 2 board members come out, Marianne and Kurt, which were great help in the afternoon. So it's looking pretty good out there. And we also did some we removed the outlets cover that was there, that grate. So there was a concern by the neighbor that lives nearest to that grate about safety with their children, because the spacing between the grates were just really large, and she was really concerned about it. So we promised her that we would switch it out, and we did this past week. And so now it's more like a tighter grate. We also had Minnesota Native Landscapes. They're our maintenance contractor for the site, and they came out after we did the planting, and they did spot mowing of some of that taller invasive vegetation that was surrounding our plantings. So now it's starting to kind of start looking pretty good. And then we also have the neighborhood park party coming up next week, Tuesday. It's at 6 p.m. It's over at the park on June 20th. There's going to be a bug guy who's going to come out and talk to the kids about bugs. They're going to have a fire truck there, police officers, and we'll be there highlighting the features of the park that we installed for water quality. And a quick update on carp management as well. You can see in the photo on the left, our intern, John, he was helping folks at WSB, Tony and Mary, install the Spring Lake barrier. So they put all that together, which was the perfect height for the time, and then we got that high water spike a couple weeks back. And so they had to make an adjustment quick and put some extra netting on the side so that fish couldn't bypass that barrier and go around it. The same thing with the desilt pond. They did a lot of constant monitoring and adjustments to make sure that the carp couldn't get through. They also were out pit tagging. They were trying to catch some more fish over on Upper Prior Lake to insert them with those less expensive pit tags. And we, as you recall, we have those 3 receivers right now. We have one before and after the carp barrier on the Spring Lake outlet, and then we have another one over by the desilt pond. So we're tracking to see if the fish are getting through, how effective these barriers are. And then we're also able to move those around too after these carp are pit tagged. And then Catherine Keller-Miller was not able to make it today, but she's one of our other staff, and she's the project lead for Raymond Park. So I wanted to give you a quick update on that as well. So we have partnered with Great River Greening on this project, and they will be out this week killing off some of that turf grass that's currently out there, removing some of that beach vegetation, and then in a couple weeks they're going to come back and they're going to start removing a lot of that buckthorn and undesirable woody understory in the forest. If you look back at historical photographs, this used to be oak savanna, so they're trying to restore that to what it used to be and bring back some of those native species. So they'll start planting that again this fall. And at that time, we might partner again with the schools or just do some native seeding out there to get things going.
Just a little update on what's going on with our policies. We're still in the process of updating our operation and maintenance manual with the DNR. They had some comments, and we're checking on information to respond to her on that. We are still in the process of revising our memorandum of agreement. That has become much more of challenge than we thought it was going to be. We thought we were just handling housekeeping things, but now it's become a question of whether or not we should have one at all. So we're going to be presenting some options to the cooperators at their next meeting on July 13th. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that we're working with the city of Prior Lake as well as our district engineer to come up with some procedure to use for putting in a dam that would be reviewed by the DNR and approved, that we could follow that in the future.
Great, thank you very much. So that's the 4.2, programs and projects. Doesn't require any action. So we're going to continue on our agenda with some of our business for the rest of the evening. Again, we hope those updates on high water levels and aquatic vegetation were helpful. So 4.3, A722-055 easement amendment. The managers, I believe you have these documents in your packet following the reports, staff reports. So we're on page 11. Maggie.
Mr. Chair and managers, so this easement amendment request, if you might recall, is for the easement amendment request that was approved first at the May 2016 meeting, where we had 7 landowners out of the 11 request that the buffer be reduced from a 30-foot width down to a 5-foot width with the incorporation of an infiltration trench that would have the same water quality benefits as before, but a smaller area. And then in August, we had the remaining 4 landowners also join in with them on that amendment request, which was also approved. And at that time, both in May and in August, we gave them a deadline. We said we want the easement amendment done and everything installed by June 1st. Well, because of delays and just the way that things work, they are asking for an extension at this time. And so they each wrote a letter that was drafted by Craig Heitkamp, which is their representative, but they each read it and signed it. They're requesting that the easement amendment deadline be extended from June 1st to September 1st. They are acknowledging that the September 1st deadline, if it's not meant for any reasons, will they stay within our scope of control, no further extension requests will be allowed. And then lastly, that they request to allow individual landowners that have completed all the requirements by September 1st, that they're really able to move forward independently without the remaining group. And so that'll allow us to keep moving forward with this amendment request, get the ones that are completed complete without having one person hold up the entire group. And so the staff recommendation is that we approve this request with a slight modification and the following condition, that really no further extension requests will be allowed for this easement amendment. But we're not going to stop them from keeping moving forward with the amendments. It's that at that point, they're going to have to request individual amendment requests, so that they're no longer moving forward as the group, that they're going to then be moving forward as individuals with a separate amendment request, if that makes sense.
It does. So members, we're looking for a motion on page 12, and I think, as Maggie mentioned, we kind of decided that the group approach wasn't working for us, and that individually we might be able to get more action more quickly. And so these letters were prepared, and I think to all of our amazement, signed very quickly. So we're very happy with that result. So I think the strategy is working, and staff is suggesting action number 1 if there is a motion.
Mr. Chair?
Manager Howley.
Questions, quick. One, what's the reason why it's not done? And then number 2, aren't we already late? These are all signed June 6th, and June 1st was the date. So are we, this should have been at our meeting last month, potentially, or what?
Manager Howley, yes, it technically should have been at the meeting last month. we were aware that it was going to likely get delayed, but we were just kind of waiting and hoping that things would kind of speed up. And the reason for the delays are multiple. A lot of the landowners are still having problems getting their mortgage consents. They started them later than they probably should have, but at the same time, some of them are more complicated mortgage companies and MERS, mortgage electronic registration systems, that just, because of their nature, take longer. And so we're struggling with that. They also didn't have a contractor lined up yet. There was just a lot of steps that just didn't happen that I don't think that they anticipated would take that long. But they seem very determined to make it by the September 1st deadline. They've contacted some of the contractors. I feel confident that they're going to make that deadline to the best of their ability.
Manager Howley, the district administrator did bring this issue to one of the board update meetings, and so we did talk through this and kind of understood some of the things that Maggie, and so there was some, at least my board input to bring it to this meeting as opposed to it earlier. Other questions or comments from the board?
Mr. President, under point number 2 on these letters they signed, it says is not met due to reasons within our scope of control. What does that phrase mean, scope of control?
Manager Hennis, that's why we added the condition on the staff recommendation, because there's always going to be stuff that's out of the control of the landowner, but that shouldn't hold up the remaining landowners. And we feel like because it's been over a year since we first approved this back in May, and it'll be a year since we approved the rest of them in August, that it's really September 1st should be the deadline period, because there's always reasons for extensions and that sort of thing. And at that point, we should still just look at them more individually at that point, rather than trying to continue to move forward as this group, if that makes sense.
And then also we acknowledge that if the September 1st deadline is not met, no further extension requests will be allowed. Okay, so what happens after September 1st if they don't comply? Where's the carrot and stick on this thing?
Manager Hennis, well, if they didn't meet that deadline, they'd have to apply for a new amendment request individually, which means they'd have to put another $1,000 down and apply for it again as an individual. So there's definitely a stick there, but it doesn't prevent them from moving forward. It just makes the September 1st deadline more important to them.
So $1,000 stick, and they start the process over. A new process. We're not extending it, correct? Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I really appreciate the efforts the staff has made on this issue. This is way more work than what we should have gotten. I think the strategy is good, splitting this up and dealing individually as we go forward. So I'll move that we approve the extension for the conservation easement as recommended by staff.
Second.
Moved by Manager Spitzmuller, second by Manager Hennis. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 4.5, Raymond Park Agreement. Maggie, is that you? Oh, I'm sorry, 4.4. Are there any manager presentations?
Mr. President, I've got one. I mentioned it to Diane, too. I don't know if she has followed on it, but the project out on my sister and my farm is 95% complete. It's got easy access now that things have dried out, so if the manager is interested in going out and seeing what a filter strip and sod grass waterways and diversions actually look like, we can still go out there sometime when at the pleasure of the managers.
Thank you, Manager Hennis. Manager Spitzmuller.
Thank you, President Corrigan, whoever. Just quickly, Kurt and I were at the council meeting last night, and I mentioned to Jamie earlier there's been kind of a seismic shift. The council was looking at a request by a potential builder on Watershed Trail, which is in Paradise Bay, the north end of the lake, very, very low-lying properties. And several properties in the past have been granted exceptions over the 30% variances over the 30% impervious surface by up to 9%. And last night, the owner was there requesting a 2.9% increase over the 30%, and the council denied the request. They upheld the denial by the Planning Commission. So I think there's been a little shift in terms of how our current council sees lake quality issues.
That's encouraging. Any other manager presentations? Hearing none, we will move on to 4.5 Raymond Park. Administrator Lynch.
Yes, Mr. Chair and managers, what this agreement is something that was actually after we had put together an agreement with the city, and that is at Spring Lake Township. Actually, didn't they look at it a couple times at a couple meetings? Mr. Hennis. So what they wanted to do was to make sure that they were not going to be responsible for any of the disturbance to the landscape if they had to get in there and do any utility work on the easement. They have a utility easement on there. And our agreement with the city is that we won't do any of the repair to the landscape, that the city will do it. So we're really covered. It's not a problem to us at all. So I went ahead and signed that agreement because we were supposed to be doing work on it last Friday. So it is in the same format with that exception with the city of Prior Lake.
Mr. President, I can just add quickly something onto that.
Hennis.
It's, they were worried about if they had a utility problem, they got utilities going through there, and they'd have to dig up the dirt, and what would happen if any shrubs or bushes would get upset or need to be replaced, or some grass need to be reseeded, and that was their basic problem with that. They have no problem in going in there and refilling the holes of any utility work, that type of thing. It's just the surface stuff that they were concerned about. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? This is showing as a discussion-only item. Do we need to formalize your agreement at any time?
Oh, Mr. Chair, we don't.
That it for Raymond Park for tonight? Yes? Okay. Moving on to 4.6, City Hall lease, it looks like.
Yes,
So
Mr. I'm sorry.
Administrator Lynch, there's on page 24 and 25, there's an agreement for a water quality project. Is that, I don't see that on the agenda.
That is the agreement
I'm sorry?
That's the one we just covered. That is the agreement.
For Raymond Park? There you go, okay, all right. And there's your signature, thank you. So page 27 is the City Hall lease extension, and this is a vote.
Yes, Mr. Chair and managers, as you know, our lease is just about up. It will be up on July 14th of this year. It's a 3-year lease, and the city has come to us and said that they would be interested in having us renew our lease with the same conditions that we had before, which is $1 for the year. And the lease indicates that that there may be renegotiation after that period. But at this point, it's simply an amendment to the current lease. And so what I'm asking for is approval by the Board of Managers.
Questions on the extension of the lease?
Mr. President, just real quick.
Manager Hennis.
This happened right around the time that Diane came 3 years ago, and I think it's been a tremendous boost in savings and convenience and in efficiencies for the district. As I look back at where we were located, tucked behind the License Bureau and Prior Lake State Bank and MGM Liquors on 42 and 13, this is so much more visible and so much easier to get to. And I think it's been one of the really strong items that we took and moved forward with in the in this. May I also point out, there's another agency here who gets the same kind of agreement that we have, and it's, they're new. They're called One Stop Shop. It's a Shakopee agency that's supposed to ferret out business opportunities in Scott County and help develop them for the betterment of the Scott County economic development. And they are right here on the main floor in the Technology Village, and they have the same agreement, $1 a year going forward. So, thank you.
Right, actually, it's a scale.
Is it a scale
initiative,
function?
not
Okay.
Not a Shakopee.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yep.
No, that's all right. Any other comments? Manager Spitzmuller.
Just quickly, Fred, I would just, I think, we, Kurt and I were, and Mary Ann, I guess, were on board when we moved from the old spot. And I think the city's, in terms of the $1 a year rent, I think that is a reflection of the fact that we all are tapping the same tax base. So I think the city's view is that that might constitute doubling up on us charging rent as part of our levy may double up on taxes in town. So I think it's a reflection of both of us being local government units and both of us having levy authority.
And apparently we've behaved ourselves during this period.
Thanks to the crew over there.
So I'm looking for a motion if there are no more questions.
So moved.
Manager Howley,
Second?
Manager Breitbart. Any additional comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Mr. Chair and members, it would be on page 34, which is the certification and delegate appointment form. And this is simply a form that the Minnesota Association of Watershed Districts requires for approval or authorization of the delegates who will be speaking on behalf of our district at the summer tour next week. So what it's doing is basically saying, these are the delegates that we've appointed, and they would like a vote on it. So as I understand, Manager Hennis and Manager Corrigan are the two people that have volunteered to be delegates, and so we would fill this in with their names.
So hopefully there's not too much disagreement here. Is there a motion to send Manager Hennis and Manager Corrigan off to the Northlands next week? Manager Breitbart.
I do have a question. Down here, it says underneath your names and the name of an alternate delegate is, so in case one of you can't make it, do we want an alternate? Is that what I'm reading?
Do we have a volunteer? to
Yeah,
be an
Manager, Mr. Chair and Manager Breitbart. Yes, I see that it does ask that. What we also can do is if it's say one of the two of you gets sick, we can do a proxy as well, and that's a different form, but we could do that as well. But yeah, might as well. I think we're doing really well to have two managers go. So if you'd like to, though, have a third indicated, I would suggest that you do so.
Do we have a volunteer to be the alternate?
I could volunteer for Wednesday night meeting, home on Thursday.
You want to be there for the action?
Yes.
Okay, so we have now three managers, Manager Hennis, Manager Corrigan, and an alternate Manager Breitbart. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I have a question. Does that mean if we both end up going, is Manager Breitbart going to come too or not? Okay.
No.
I was unsure. Thank you.
So is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second.
Are there any additional questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to the more controversial part of this mod vote, 4.8, starting on page 35. Okay,
Chair,
there was a discussion at the workshop here, so I think you can give us an overview. There are my understanding is how are we going to deal with this? There are 3 votes that will be taken.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Are we going to take a single vote or 3 votes?
Okay, Mr. Chair and managers, when we talked, Mr. Chair, we talked about having 1 vote, which would be including all 3. And that's what I wrote the proposal for, although when I wrote it, I didn't know that there was going to be 3. I learned that yesterday when I talked to Ray Bone, who is the executive director of MAUD, that they are going to have a separate one on the budget. So at MAUD, they will have 3 votes. One is a vote to change the bylaws. And the reason that vote is really important, that we were told by Mary Texer today from Capital Region Watershed District, who gave an overview of the MAUD changes, is that one is the one that authorizes the board to move ahead with hiring staff and also with being able to have the flexibility to change the budget as well as the fee structure. And so that's the first vote. The second vote is for the MOP, which is the Manual of Policy and Procedures. That's a new manual, and that is really directs how the office is going to be handled and how the staff are going to be hired and move forward with that. And then the third one is actually the budget. So indicated in here that in the pros and cons that the budget has increased about $93,000, and that is primarily because MAUD has been operating with a part-time contract director and lobbyist, which is Ray Bone, and then contractual clerical support, which was with Peg Bone. And they've been there for about 23 years, and what I've heard is that we've gotten a really good deal with them. They really are priced below the market. They also were able to do it at a least expensive cost because they officed out of their home. That has been a concern of many members because it's not really a professional organization when the records of the organization are kept in the garage. So, not to have access to the membership. So there had been a concerted effort by a number of managers and administrators to look at what it is that MAUD should be moving forward. There were a couple surveys that were sent out to managers and administrators to get their feedback on what direction they'd like to see it take, what were their priorities. The priorities were primarily to separate the administrator from the lobbyist, to have a full-time executive director, to have a lobbyist that would be either contractual or full-time, and to have a separate location so that the organization can be more professional, and then offering services such as training services, continual to have representation at the administrative level, so with state agencies, as well as to provide other services, membership services, which is to have special events and meetings, provide materials to the administrators and the managers, as well as other things. So, what this is it's a look forward. It's rather than looking back and saying what we didn't like about MAUD, it's looking forward and saying, okay, we get a chance now to write this all over. We can make this organization whatever we want it to be. Yes, we've indicated that there are some concerns that some of the board members have been on the board for a really long time, and unfortunately, the bylaws weren't changed to have term limits for the board members. They were changed to have term limits for the officers, which is a step in the right direction, but not completely, as I've heard some of our board members say they want to go. So what I put together for you, and I recognize it's pretty complicated, what staff is recommending that you support the 3 motions that will be made at the meeting: the bylaws revision, the budget, and the MOP. primarily because moving forward and looking forward, the best way to direct how that goes is by being a member. But there's a number of caveats that I've heard a number of people say that they were concerned about, and I've indicated those. Now, what I learned when I talked with Ray Bone yesterday is that they are going to have the opportunity to have motions from the floor. So our 2 delegates will have that opportunity. If you want to take any of these bullet points and make a motion to make those changes, you will have that opportunity to do so. And some of those would be that we're going to monitor and evaluate the organizational changes that have been outlined, and we'll determine before 2019 if we want to continue membership. The 2018 membership would be billed in April of next year, and then it would be through the new fiscal year. And then that we encourage that there's a change in the MOD board, so that there would be half administrators and half board members, board managers on there. Right now, it's totally board managers. That you support a sincere and thorough review of the due structure. Now, that's one that that staff and Manager Breitbach and I have been really pushing for, because the due structure is based upon something that has been used for a long time, and it's based on estimated market value. That really, our point of view is that has nothing to do with the ability to pay. So it should be more like based upon the budget and the levy of the Watershed District. We heard at our workshop that one of our fellow watershed districts in Scott County has a budget lower than ours, and they're asked to pay the limit, which we are, which is $7,500. So that is an appreciable part of their budgets, an appreciable part of ours. When you look at other watershed districts, when they have 41 staff people and a $15 million budget, they're more able to handle an appreciable dues change like we have, which is almost double, from $4,000 to $7,500. So those are the options that you have, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So let me just, so this will, when we get to voting on this, we'll amend it to supports 3 votes, revisions, the bylaws, the MOP, and the budget. There, on the second last bullet, I meant to send you a note about this. Does that make any sense? The board encourages MOD memberships to limit. I think you got it. Well, I think she got it in the one before, but I'm. Okay, so we would delete that second last bullet. So, Manager Hennis, a question that we need. I, just speaking for myself, need some direction on whether the board is comfortable with each of these bullets, and whether the board wants us to offer these as motions or just conditions to our vote, however we choose to vote tonight. Anybody have any thoughts on any of these individually that you would like to see us bring forward to the body on Wednesday night individually? So the way we originally kind of framed this was to say that we will continue working with the MOD board to consider making the following changes, and that we will monitor, review, and evaluate the organizational changes envisaged, and then we'll determine before 2019 if it wants to continue membership. And my understanding is that and the following bullets are our conditions for considering membership after that first year. That isn't the way this is structured. So I guess my main question for the board is, are there any of these that you would like us to separately bring up as a motion for the membership of MOD to consider next week? Manager Breitbach.
Yes, the one that we talked about in the workshop, that the board encourages MOD membership to support term limits.
Okay.
I think that's important. And the board supports sincere and thorough review of mod dues structure and creation of the one that more equitably reflects a district's ability to pay.
Okay.
One above that.
Yeah, Manager Breitbach, I agree with that, and that's what's holding me back on voting for the bylaws section of this. We've got the bylaws, you got the MOP, and we got the budget. And I like the bylaws thought, except this business with letting the board not have term limits just does not fly as far as I'm concerned. You know, I hate to vote the bylaws part down because of that, but this is important. I mean, this strikes to the roots of some of the problem, as you and I both agree on, I think. So, Manager Corrigan, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess, Manager Hennis, I wonder, I'm not sure how the meeting is going to be structured next week. I mean, it's possible, which confuses our vote tonight, it's possible that if the membership of MOD agreed to support term limits, that would amend the bylaws and allow the bylaws to be voted on as amended. And I don't know how much finessing we want to do tonight in terms of making some of these conditional, but if you believe it needs to be conditional, that you, speaking for yourself, can't support this motion unless there are term limits, that's something that you might want to include in our motion tonight.
I guess.
Manager Breitbach.
Oh,
Manager Spitzmuller first.
I would suggest that the bullet point that precedes those two is also of interest to me, where the board membership would be changed and actually have some representation by district managers.
I agree with that, but
Yeah, and I guess I don't know how these motions, like you say, would be received, and if we either approve or not approve based on whether these go forward, and if they don't, then is there an opportunity for, on an annual basis, for us to revisit and have an opportunity to amend as we go along?
as we understood the discussion in the workshop, yes, you could call a special meeting, I think, if we weren't successful. So that goes back to, now I'm hearing there are three of our bullets that might impact our support for the bylaws. The representation of district administrators and board managers, thorough review of the due structure, and term limits for board members.
Mr. Chair, I guess I would like to see those in there as we put them in there, but if they, to me, the bylaws should go forward. I guess I would like to see the bylaws go forward with reviewing, an opportunity to review those if they don't go forward, that we don't let them go.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that we have any control over that. That's the issue, I guess. I mean, there could be a procedural motion at the end of all of this to say, we want to review the bylaws in a year. Never mind just the budget and the dues, but we want to take another look at the bylaws in a year or have a discussion about the bylaws. I don't know, what's your, Administrator Lynch, what's your guess as to, just at the membership meeting in December, can there be a motion from the floor to consider some of these? I would think they could. So, let's say everybody's in the same situation we are tonight. We agree to support at least the bylaws, but we have some concerns about the bylaws that we would like to see addressed. It seems to me it's a matter of urgency. Do we want them addressed before we vote on this? and make those motions before we vote? Or do we want some assurance that we'll have a chance to vote on those at a future meeting?
Mr. Chair, I didn't bring the bylaws with me, so I don't know how they're written. I know that they have put more structure to the resolution process, and any of these could be a resolution. And I think, we certainly would have time to put those together to have them considered by the Resolutions Committee. You might want to put your eggs in two baskets, which is, number one, make the motions on the floor next Wednesday, and then also, as a standby, have resolutions to the same effect that should be considered by the members in December. Now, if you're lucky enough to have the resolutions passed next week, then the other ones become moot. But I think that that's probably not going to be the case.
I think that's a good suggestion. I'm guessing, though, that the board would have some confidence that they would be able to defeat those resolutions in December if they get these bylaws passed this time.
Dan, is there not a time limit on the resolutions? They have to be submitted so much time in front? I mean,
Yes.
we're going to probably be late for that, right?
Mr. Chair, I don't have the bylaws with me, so I
Seems
don't
to me,
remember.
because I ran it when I tried to do some of this winter meeting or so ago.
Well, that's why I'm thinking that we need to do it PDQ, really pretty darn quick, to get it in their cycle for resolutions for December.
Having you dig out Robert's rules, these are amendments we're talking about to a resolution. The resolution has been notified. The membership has been noted by the 3 votes that will be taken. Do you have to notify people of proposed amendments to resolutions?
What I was told by Ray yesterday was that amendments will be taken on the floor. So unlike with the annual meeting, when you have to have them ahead of time. However, they say that they entertain them on the floor, but we haven't seen that be very practical. But like I say, I think we have the opportunity to get them in writing. And we have been successful with written resolutions with the board.
Manager Howley.
The
Answer, please.
Yes, the answer I would propose is to keep it simple. I don't want to, whatever we do here tonight, I can see many situations where our 2 delegates next week will be faced with casting a vote based on, regardless of what happens there, if it doesn't go the right direction, you would have to vote it down if we say, for example, we support the 3 resolutions only if we get 3 bullet points into them. Well, if those don't get into them, well, then you as delegates can't vote for them, and I don't want to get into that situation. I think we either just on face value, either up or down on the 3, either individually or as a group. We can sure bring these up as friendly amendments when you're there and say, yeah, take a run at it, but our approval of how you support them, I don't think should get muddied up, because you may not know how you should vote when it's all said and done, based on what we say here tonight. Does that make any sense? Just keep it clean, and if we support these 3 and they get passed by Maud next week, and now they're in place, then there's housekeeping to be done in the winter meeting and the subsequent meetings after that, which I think there's going to be a lot of that. That's just where I come down on it.
Mr. President?
Reaction, Manager Hennis?
Yeah, so Charlie, what you're saying is we would support the 3 bullet points under staff recommendation, but my question is more critical, is the board still going to do separate votes here tonight on whether the 2 delegates should support A, the bylaws, B, the MOP, and C, the budget/dues increase? You still think we should do three votes on that, right? Or wrong?
Well, no, I think if there's a sense that the majority of the vote here tonight would pass all three, we can do it with one motion. If we think that, yeah, we're all going to agree with two of them, but not a third one, well, then we would take individual motions here tonight about how we want our delegates to vote. Well, then maybe we should just plan to do them individually, because then we can get a up or down, a majority. But the recommendation, the bullets that we talked about, we should, you know, they shouldn't be a condition of how you vote up there is what I'm saying, because you may be put in a position where you didn't get it in exactly how it's written here, and then your hands are tied, and we probably don't want to be in that position.
I guess I think those bullet points is something we should keep our eye on the prize.
Okay, so in the interest of moving forward, let's, I guess I would suggest doing it the other way, and doing it as it's written, so to see whether there's support for passing all three in one motion. So Manager Howley, you were pretty close to doing that if you would like to make that motion.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. The Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District Board supports 3 bylaws revisions, 3 resolutions at the MAUD meeting consisting of bylaw revisions, the MOP, and the budget.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, any other discussion or question?
Now, is this, I got to get this clear, is this a vote on the dues increase, or what is this?
This is a vote.
Why are we lumping all these together? I mean, you know, it's only 3 votes.
To answer your question, the initial dues increase is in effect, correct? We're not voting on 2018 in any of this. That's a done deal.
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
So in our conditions, either at this meeting, if you choose to be the one that proposes a more thorough review of the dues structure, you and I are going to have to decide who wants to stand up to this mob, but you have that opportunity to continue that discussion. But no, what you're doing in this motion is you are, as I understand it, Manager Howley, you are supporting the bylaws revision, the MOP, and the budget, not the future dues.
Mr. Chair, members, so the dues are in the budget. However, there's two ways.
For 1 year.
Yeah, for 1 year, yes.
Then the board would have to approve the dues for the following year.
Yes, so this is simply for 2018.
Correct.
So, yes, so the budget is for 2018. The due structure is in the MOP, which is that old formula, and that old formula leads us to the budget that's set for 2018.
So, Manager Hannes, originally we had kind of talked about a conditional, and we continue to talk about a conditional support of this budget for 1 year. And if they don't get the dues straightened out, this board has indicated a reluctance to continue.
If the board in its majority feels that we want to pay $7,500 for a year, you know, having nearly doubled, that's the way it's going to be. But I can't see why we just don't vote on the in 3 parts.
So.
I understand that. Yeah, okay.
So you have another shot at 18 dues, but we know what they're going to be.
Right.
That's the number.
Right.
I believe we have been told, Diane, that if we chose to pay 4,000 dues, they wouldn't accept it. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, we haven't offered to pay $4,000. And so, no, I don't know. The dues are $7,500. I don't see any caveats in the bylaws or the MOP that would indicate how to handle that. We did hear today from Mary that watershed districts cannot be associate members. And the associate members will pay anywhere, I think the first year it's 500 up to 1,500, which is certainly nicer than 7,500, but they won't allow that for watershed districts.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and that motion is to support all three revisions with the, and forward these comments to the MOD meeting next week. If there's no other questions or comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Nay. Motion fails.
Chair, so there were, what was the?
3-2 fail, or 2-3.
So it passes then?
2-3.
Oh, it's 2-3? Okay.
So let's go back to try and make it maybe not quite as simple, Manager Howley, and vote all three individually and see how we do, I guess. So we'll start with the bylaws.
I'll make a motion to approve the bylaws only.
And then I guess for the board, do these conditions continue to be, or do they all relate to each of these motions as we make them, or do we have to get creative and maybe we attach them to the first, to the bylaws revisions, and not to the other two? I don't know. The board, some of these apply to membership, some of them apply to the board of directors.
Mr. Chair, and I would be happy to give some direction to you and Manager Hennis about which one goes with which.
Okay, all right. So assuming we can figure that out in the next day or two, Manager Howley, you made a motion to support the bylaws revision? Is there a second? Manager Spitzmuller seconds. Any other discussion or questions? All in now, and given the discussion that we had at the workshop to inform this vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I have 2 or 3?
3,
Howley?
4, I don't know.
Mr. Chair, could I suggest that you ask for
Okay, so
voice
I'm
votes?
Manager Howley.
Individual?
Aye?
Aye.
Manager Spitzmuller.
Aye.
Manager Breitbach.
Aye.
Manager Hennis.
Aye.
Manager Corrigan, aye. All in, hearing 5 in favor, no opposed, motion passes. Okay, Manager Howley, the second one.
Make a motion supporting the MOP resolution at the next week's MOD.
Manager Howley makes a motion to support the MOP. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Manager Breitbach, second. Questions or comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Manager Hennis. Okay, we have 3 in favor, all in, those opposed. Manager Hennis, no. Manager Corrigan, no. Passes on a 3-2. Manager Howley.
I'll make a motion that our delegates support the budget at next week's MOD meeting.
Is there a second? Manager Breitbach.
I'll second that.
Any other questions, suggestions, or comments on budget only? I gathered, again, with the input we had from at the workshop, at least I was informed that, or it seemed to me that the budget would be worked out in some fashion if there was not support, and I'm talking about at the MOD vote at this point, I'm not trying to influence your votes, But if it was to fail at next week, the budget resolution, that somehow a budget would be approved and brought back at least in December.
Manager Breitbach, do you have a comment?
I think that's what I heard Mary. I think Mary addressed that. If the budget fails, they would relook at the budget, but the MOP and the bylaws, or at least the bylaws, have to pass in order to move on. But I thought she said also that if the budget failed, they would rework it and bring it to the December meeting.
And if the bylaws pass, I would assume that the board has the authority to pass another budget. The bylaws don't pass, the board doesn't have any authority to do anything, or very much.
Mr. Chair and members, I also heard her say that there are some reserve funds that they could bring forward for the budget. And that was a surprise to me because I know when I was involved in discussions, they were talking about using the reserve budget for this year, 2017. I didn't know that they were considering something like that for 2018. So new information, I guess.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Chair,
does that,
Just for the record, you know, I'm taking a leap of faith and taking a run at this, that they're going to get their ducks in a row and put themselves together. They're throwing a budget number at this, and then, you know, the next year it's going to get reevaluated, and that's when personally, I'm going to take a much closer look at it. Right now, you know, I don't want to get in the way is where I'm sitting on this, so.
okay, any other questions? Are we clear on the motion? And the impact of voting on the motion?
Mr. Chair, could I ask you to ask individuals, because somehow I'm not hearing very well over here.
You're not hearing what the motion is?
No, I'm hearing the motion, but when people speak, I don't know, when you say, you know, 3-2 or something, I don't know who said what, because I can't hear that. So if you could ask individual how they voted, that would be my preference.
So you're not clear on the last vote?
No, I'm okay now. Now I understand, but if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, no, I have no problem with that. So all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Manager Howley is an aye.
Aye.
Manager Breitbach is an aye. Any other ayes? All opposed?
No.
Manager Hennis?
No.
Manager Spritz? Mueller? And Manager Corrigan? So the motion fails 2-3. I think we've done this to death, right? So you'll
Mr.
help us.
Chair and managers, thank you so
In the
much.
next few days. So you'll help us, as I understand it, you'll help the two delegates to convey the messages in these bullets. And in some cases, I heard, and if the board's comfortable, Manager Hennis and I will figure out whether we want to present separate motions for the makeup of the board, for the due structure, and for the term limits, but you'll leave that to our discretion. That's my understanding. If you would like to give us more direction on whether or not to make those motions at the meeting, now is the time to let us know. Hearing none, we'll take our best shot. Okay, so have we done all the damage we can do to this one? Okay.
I think you've answered all those questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry?
I think you've done everything you could on these. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. So 4.9 on the agenda, 2017 Education and Outreach. And this is a vote.
Mr. Chair and members, this is our annual requirement for our MS4 compliance. And what I did is I went through the one that we had last year, which was 2015, 2016. And what I did is I updated it. I also added some areas where I thought it was necessary. I went into some detail about residential and agricultural cost share, our demonstration projects, our conservation easements and projects, and then some detail about specifically our stormwater outreach and education. So those are the areas that I really spent the most time on, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or if there's anything that you think I should put in there that I didn't, I would be happy to do so.
Questions from the board on the education and outreach plan for 2017? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the 2017 education and outreach plan?
So moved.
Senator Manager Hennis moves.
I'll second.
Manager Spitzmuller seconds. Any other question or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 5-0. We're back on track now.
Thank you.
Okay, on page 44, this is also a vote. We had a presentation on the CARP management program at our last meeting. It's my understanding that this document reflects that presentation. So if you have questions certainly on the document, now is the time to let us know. Otherwise, I'll accept a motion to adopt the CARP management plan as presented.
Mr. President, I have a quick question. Can we just kind of go over the grant numbers, the dollar numbers on this? What's being financed, what's being involved, please?
Mr. Chair, Manager Hennis. So this plan that WSB put together doesn't specifically address the monetary value to all the things that we're proposing to implement, but I can run through the current grants and projects that we have with WSB if that's helpful.
If it wouldn't take up too much time, if you can just go over it briefly, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we have a grant through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. It's a Clean Water Partnership grant, and so $67,000 is coming from the grant, and then the Watershed District is contributing the match, which is $67,000 over the spread of 3 years, and that ends in 2018. The second grant that we got was for the Desalt Pond carp barrier. That was the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. It was part of their clean water funds. So we got that Conservation Partners Legacy Grant, which is a total of $18,000. And then the Watershed District's contribution, I believe, is something like $3,000 for that.
I'm sorry, how many? The match was what?
$3,000.
Okay.
And then also last fall, when we were having all of the bad water quality experiences in Upper Prior Lake, we also added on an additional initiative to do the pit tagging, to insert 300 carp with radio tags to better track their movement and figure out better locations for barriers. And so that is not part of a grant, but it's an additional, I think it's $17,000 over the span of a year and a half.
That's from the DNR also? The 17th.
No, that's not a grant, but that's like a separate project that we approved to help figure out the water quality component and accelerate the carp management in Upper Prior Lake.
So those are district funds?
Mm-hmm. That's just with district funds. And then just a few weeks ago, we also applied for that LCCMR grant. And so that's really pumping up our efforts for carp management. Right now, they're not grouping up at all. And so we kind of missed our opportunity this spring to do a seine because they just weren't grouping up where they can, where the seiners can get in Upper Prior. So the LCCMR grant will not only expand the carp management efforts to multiple more lakes within the district, it will also have like a herding component. So our idea is to use the sound that has been tested in different studies where they use it to create a barrier for carp so it stops them from going. But we're going to use it as a herding technique to get them into where we need them to be so we can seine. So we're using that sort of system, innovative box trapping, different methods to be better at seining. And so that has we're asking LCCMR for roughly $350,000 of grant money, and then we would contribute the, roughly $65,000. That is the same amount over 3 years that we've been contributing for the PCA grant. So we'd be contributing the same amount as we are with our current grant, so it wouldn't necessarily increase our budget at all, but we're also increasing our partners because we're getting those contributions from the Prior Lake Association, the Spring Lake Association. SMSC said they would take the fish as they have done before. Prior Lake would store some of our nets and let us use their boats. So we have a bunch more partners in that grant.
Thank you.
So is that last one, the LCCMR grant, what you were talking to Claire Roebling about the other day? Was that money became available after this legislative session or during this legislative session?
Mr.
Possibly.
Chair, actually what became available was $11 million from the hazardous mitigation program. So that's the money that was stalled from last year's bonding bill. So that is available primarily to project-ready projects, or ones that are ready to go in the ground. So what I responded to Claire Roebling is that we don't have anything that's project-ready right now, but we hope that we will get something project-ready so that we can put it into the bonding bill. We can ask to try to get it into the bonding bill next year.
So the MPCA grant and the DNR Legacy grant, those dollars are funded?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good question, Manager Hennis. Any, I guess I'm looking for a motion. I do have one question. Is there a time frame for this plan, beginning and end? I see some yearly updates and things, but is this plan covers us through some period of time or open-ended?
Mr. Chair, managers, so this is an integrated pest management plan. So it's kind of like our flood study that we did. So it's meant to be a living document. So every year we'd do an analysis on where we're at, what needs to be done, and update it. So on a yearly basis, we're looking back, seeing where we're at, and just continually adjusting and making new goals.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the carp management plan as presented.
So moved.
Manager Hennis.
Yeah, I'll second and just acknowledge the great work that our WSB team has been doing. I think we've got a good team on board, and I think they're working on our behalf.
Agreed. Moved by Manager Hennis, seconded by Manager Spitzmuller. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, meeting minutes from the May 9th board workshop, May 9th board meeting, May 25th special meeting, and the CAC minutes as presented from May 25th. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Moved by Hennis,
I'll second.
seconded by Spitzmuller. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Passes unanimously. Moving on to the treasurer's report. Manager Spitzmuller.
Thank you, Fred. Let me go through a couple numbers, and then I have a question, Dan. We had a couple deposits this month. We had an ACH from the state of Minnesota, which is in the amount of 29 grand exactly, and then there was a $5,524 deposit. The state undoubtedly was related to the grant funds. Do you know what the $5,000 deposit was about this month? Sorry, I meant to review this with you before the meeting, but.
Mr. Chair, Manager Spitzmuller, no, I don't. I'll have to check on that.
Okay, thank you. Otherwise, our balances are good. We're in great shape. We'll get our first half levy payment by the 21st, I've been assured, and that'll be the amount of $698,000. Current balances at Klein Bank are $285 and change, and ours at Northland $851,278. We're spent about 34%, which is tracking below plan. We've spent, our budget is about $482,000 spent against $1,396,000 budget, so we're in pretty good shape. We started the balance, our Klein balance, the count at Klein started out at 386 something beginning of May, and we're at 285, 476 right now, so I'm thinking we're in relatively strong position here going forward.
Any question about the treasurer's report?
Mr. President, I have one
Mr.
quick question.
Manager
What do you,
Hennis.
is the 698, is that how much we're supposed to have gotten, or is this over and above because of late payments by property owners?
Manager Spitzman.
Yeah, that's half of our levy. And that can vary somewhat. From what I understand, it could be actually larger than that, because I've been told that many taxpayers instead of May and October, they pay everything early. So it's likely that it'll be a little larger than that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions about the financial report? Cash and investments? Okay, so moving on to the claims list, which is a vote. Manager Spitzmuller, page 70, it looks like.
Yeah, so
And 71? 71, I'm sorry.
70 is, for your input, page 70 is our accountant's report. That's that detailed, and those are the numbers I just highlight in my report. So Chris has far more detail. That's been worked over significantly in the last few years. But anyway, that represents those numbers at a much lower level. He goes into detail by projects and so on.
And I know we tweaked this again last year, so we're pretty much, everybody happy with it now, I think? Is it working for you? Is it working for Ann?
I think it's terrific, Mr. President.
Okay, great.
Much better than anything we ever had.
Yeah, a lot of insight into what's going on, so.
So stop the tweaking? We can stop the tweaking
Well,
now?
until we tweak something else.
We're all tweaked out.
All right, moving on to page 71.
So yeah, the claims list, I don't, unless you have some specific questions, there's nothing really very remarkable on here this month.
Any questions for the treasurer? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the claims list.
I can move to approve the May claims list.
I second that.
Seconded by Manager Reichbach. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Upcoming events schedule, Administrator Lynch.
Mr. Chair, members, the only thing that we have in the near future is the CAC meeting. That falls on the last Thursday of the month, which this month is June 30th.
Thank you. Any other business to be done? Then it looks like Manager Spitzman is ready to adjourn.
Before I do that, just want to put in a plug for the July 4th festivities on the lake. That'll happen before our next meeting. So the Lake Association will conduct the annual boat parade starting at 1 o'clock, forming up near near Charlie's, and and fireworks go off at 10 o'clock on Watsell's Beach. I will. I'll move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second, Manager Hennis, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?